What is the work that you have done to further the integration of ICTs in education and training in Africa?
Well, in fact, speaking in the name of the bank, in terms of the bank's involvement in ICT integration of ICT in education, I would say that we have evolved. We have had several levels. For instance, in the 80s, 70s and 80s, this is a time where we were buying computers systematically in our education project in schools and so on and so forth, and training teachers and students to use computers. And then we moved to another level where we really think that we needed to do more, and even beyond countries, having to use this as regional integration tool. And you will see that we had a big multinational project like the one in SADC for open and learning education in SADC, covering the SADC countries. We are also supporting the African Virtual University, which is really offering a platform for higher education training, for several countries in Africa. And then, so these are a few examples where we moved ahead in integrating. And then we are seeing beyond that. ICT is not only a tool, for really improving access and quality in education, but it is also a value chain. And, Africa also needs to conduct research, to be part of a knowledge society, to conduct research and innovation in this area. And then this is why, for instance, we supported the Kigali Regional Center of Excellence, which is a partnership with one of the leading ICT universities in the US, Carnegie Mellon University. So really for postgraduate training and research in ICT, so that really Africa also really can be part of the game in research and innovation. So we have a variety of approaches and for this international ICT in education.
Mr. Gedebe, as an analyst in charge of education at the African Development Bank, you have had a good overview of the evolution of educational practices across the continent. How feasible do you believe these ICT projects are in terms of enhancing education across Africa?
I think, as we have learned during these past 3 days, you have a variety of possible technologies. Some of them are really cost-effective. Some of them are probably because you see the challenges we are facing are so many that really this is an opportunity. You heard about the millions of children who will not have the opportunity to go to school if we continue like this, and also the hundreds and thousands of teachers who need to be trained if we continue in these models. You see, and then we are lucky that we have various technologies. You heard about this TV white space yesterday, because everybody, we are using TV everywhere, but the TV channels can also offer us a medium to use to integrate ICT and reach many people. And I think I don't say that it is unrealistic, but what we need to do is to take into account the fact that not all countries are at the same levels, and not all technologies can be applied in all countries. So really, if we make sure that the countries can share, the resources, and also that at the internal level we can bring about the different partnerships, because it's not only partnership. It's not only the Minister of Education business. You heard, for instance, that in certain countries that you have the telecom companies, and then you have the Minister of Energy, the Minister of Infrastructure coming together to make this possible. So I think if this is going to be kind of commitment at national levels, but we also need really to encourage regional cooperation, so that really we can make economies of scales. This is what the bank has been doing. You see the AVU, this Carnegie Mellon University as a regional one, also the SADC one, and so on, so that really we can, coming together, I think they will be stronger. So it is not even a matter of choice. We have to go for it, and you have to find the appropriate mechanism of doing so. I think we can make it. Some other countries did it, and we have good examples. But it has to be, you have this leadership thing, the government have to believe in it and really create the partnerships within countries and even between countries so that this can happen. To me, really, it's not a question of choice. Yeah.
Teachers, students, and governments have to be on board to implement such drastic changes to the way education is approached, not only in Africa but across all continents. Mrs. Wastiau, tell us about your own experience with the European Schoolnet Academy.
First of all, the Academy idea comes from the fact that we've observed it in Europe. Even in countries where a lot of money is being invested in acquiring equipment, the daily practice in the classroom didn't change a lot. So it was still, in some cases, even reinforcing the old model, the old transmissive models. So the ministry is represented in European Schoolnet. There are 30 European countries represented in European Schoolnet through their Ministry of Education, decided to put the efforts on the area of pedagogy. And of course, when you speak about pedagogy, you speak about the teachers. And we observe that in the society, generally speaking, we live, it is no more an issue for policymakers just to decide about a reform for the reform to be implemented. There is an issue of people supposed to participate to this reform to be convinced about it. So it's a question of adhesion to the ideas. And we have an incredible potential with ICT that is by nature a tool that can be directly used by the active people on the ground. And it's really an issue of giving it to them, for them to do something starting from where they are, what their objective is. And this is why we came with this idea of the academy, not to use it as a transfer system, transfer of knowledge, but as a place where teachers can exchange about their practice, can discuss about it. And also, of course, we have to transmit a few concepts, a few theories, a few methods to them, but to do it in a way that it is always related to practice first. So it's not at all to say only practice, because we also know that this doesn't work, but to present the theory as something that is supporting practice and how it can become operationalized in the daily life of the classroom. So this is where the idea of this academy comes from. And one of the really big issue of it and the focus of it, the main tool, will be the practice video. So really filming real interaction into the classroom for the teachers to later on discuss about it, make their own views about it. And this is very important because both in initial teacher training, young students, teachers, doesn't have a lot of concrete ideas about how it will function in the classroom, and they need to be prepared. And this practice video, by the way, a tool that can be used only in online or using technology, is really helping them to enter into the shoes of a real classroom situation without being at the first sight completely under pressure of it. So this is why we make it a very key aspect of this academy project.
What kind of feedback have you gotten so far as you start implementing these types of educational platforms? And are you looking into launching this European Schoolnet model in other continents?
We are not yet, first of all, it's not yet running. We will launch the first courses in March and April. And for the moment, it will be developed basically for the education system in Europe, in the European Union. But there is a lot of interest to also make it accessible to other education systems, and of course those of Africa are most than welcome, because the interesting aspect of it is that as Europe represents a lot of different culture and languages, it's also a situation that is attractive and interesting for Africa, where you also have a lot of different culture and different languages. So being used to develop such kind of diversified project could be an interesting alternative also for Africa, because we will be able to offer programs in different languages, and we will use tools, because we will do that at European level, we will use tools we can rather easily adapt to another language, with using subtitles, for example, when we showcase video and this kind of tools we will use. So I'll be able to answer your question in, let's say, 1 year time, more or less.
What role does UNESCO have in integrating ICTs in education and training in Africa?
Yeah, I am representing UNESCO, International Institute for Capacity Building in Africa. In short, we call it ICBA. It's a Category 1 institute, the only Category 1 institute in Africa, established in 1999. And our focus is on teacher issues in general in Africa. Well, we cover all the 54 countries, which would be an opportunity as well as a challenge. We can discuss this one later. In ICBA, we have been focusing particularly on the ICT aspect. We have been led by a capacity building model, which is at individual, institution, and environmental level. At institutional level, we have been training teacher educators, teacher trainers in Africa in how to integrate ICT in the teaching learning process. In fact, at the beginning period, we also offer the master's program in collaboration with African universities like Addis Ababa University, Makerere University, and Cape Coast University in MA in ICT in education. So this one builds not only the individual teacher trainers capacity, but also builds the institute. The institute or the college or the university later is running that program by its own. So when we withdraw, the capacity will be there. We have also done at environmental level, for us that environment is the Ministry of Education. Unless we convince the minister's office and the planners and the curriculum developers, etc., in the value of investing or even building the capacity of teacher trainers in RCT in education, mere capacity development at grassroots level would take us nowhere. So we trained or we built the capacity of the planners in how they map and plan out the ICT in education strategies by taking the macroeconomic as well as other intersectoral relationships. So later then, as my colleague from ADB already indicated, the African Union is aiming at continental integration and also regional integration in politics and others, economic and trade and etc. For that, we believe that education plays a key role. Based on this premise, we tried to develop ICT-enhanced teacher standards, first for regional economic communities, for ECOWAS, for SADC, for ICAS, for IGAD, and others. Unfortunately, we didn't go to the Northern Africa because of lack of capacity, both financial as well as other. And these standards were aiming at, first of all, building the capacities, and secondly, promoting mobility among member states within the country. So if a teacher from Senegal wants to move to Cote d'Ivoire or wherever, there is a need to have the minimum level of capacity in integrating ICT in teacher education programs. Those standards were also converted into training models, which I already discussed this morning, as the integration of content, pedagogy, and technology. Because if a industrial chemist is trained, the pure content would be the focus. But if we train chemistry teachers, the content itself should be for teaching purposes, because it has to take into account the learners, not the industry or the factory or whatever. Because of this reason, we developed a model which we call ICT Enhanced Teacher Development Model. And based on those models, we have also developed modules for the 4 science subjects: chemistry, physics, biology, mathematics, plus 2 social science subjects: African history and African geography. This is, in a nutshell, what we have been doing.
From your experience, do you believe that technology can truly mend the educational gap in countries where literacy rates are particularly low?
In fact, you see, as I was saying before, we work at national level, also at regional level, and the importance of what we call the regional economic communities is key in this policy dialogue and interaction with the bank, because the countries are organized in regional economic communities with certain rules, and the regional economic community has certain convening power, and also they agree on certain common points, and this is a good channel really for introduction of these standards or common way of doing things and so on. So this is why it has been suggested during this forum that while really working at national levels and taking into consideration the different levels of the country, we should really move towards really encouraging the working at regional level, so that really we can have the resources together and so on and so forth. But in terms of regional economic communities and also the African Union as a whole has a tradition of strategies. When you take what you call the second decade of education, which of AUU, there is a second decade policy for the second decade of education by the AU, and which really specifies the objectives and the strategies which the AU has for the continent. And all the countries buy into this. So, in fact, there's this tradition. ICT is part of it, probably. ICT is real. There's an ICT component, higher education component. And this is important because once it is the AU, it means that all the head of states of the African Union Commission adhere to this. You see, so by working really with the African Union and the regional economic communities, we can make sure that really we have at least a common basis for action, which at least common basis for action on which we can work, and really for which we can do individual policy dialogue once you have a common policy. And you also know that the bank has really taken into account the situation of particular countries. You see, we have a fragile state, a special policy for fragile states. Countries coming from conflict or specific country, and now they are working on a strategy for fragile states. Really, it is. We have financing instruments already, and then we are working on a strategy which includes really all sectors and all different sectors, and definitely the aspect related to the use of modern technologies really to improve our action will be integrated. So we have the general context, we have strategies for the continent, and the banks works closely, and I know the other institutions also work closely with the African Union Commission within the context of the education for the decade of the digital affairs, which really has ICT component, and we can really work for this to assist. Yeah.
In fact, ICBA is specifically working on the teacher development aspect of the second decade of education. And the second decade of education, one of the pillars is teacher development. While we are supporting member states in Africa, we are also implementing the AUC's second decade of education, which the first decade was over. And in ICBA in particular, our model takes into account the various levels of development of teachers, be it from pedagogical, from content, or from technology point of view. We believe that, let alone from country to country, even in one institution, in one college or in one school, the various teachers will definitely be at different levels. So the model can accommodate whoever is where, and we have the assessment instruments to measure where teachers are in these areas. So it means we can address, be it a post-conflict or a conflict or a developed system, educational system, our model will be directly addressing those differences because it is a context-embedded development system.
I would like to add that it's really an issue of agreeing about what the teacher profession has to be nowadays. And this is something that can be shared by very different systems. And also to agree about the fact that the youngsters have to be able to possess a certain set of competence, digital competence, not just to work and do things with ICT, but also to be able to use it in a critical manner as well. And this is again something I think many education systems can agree with. And then there will be some differences in the type of strategy that will be implemented to start from point X and to reach these goals. And there must be some margin of maneuver depending not just what the starting point of each country is, but also the type of system and the aim of education, because not all education systems follow exactly the same aim, and this is also a richness in the world. So it has to be recognized, and then strategies can adapt with it, especially when it is about ICT and digital media. We have had good example this morning of software and plans to use it for alphabetization, for example. So it's particularly a tool that can really be adjusted to many different types of situations. So we should be able to define common goals and basic common strategies as well.
What has this forum brought you, and what new ideas are you taking home with you?
Well, one of the most important, as far as I am concerned, is the networking, knowing who does what and how to partner. Because the ICT in education, in particular, when you focus it to a particular continent, the bank going this way, the European Union that way, UNESCO another way, it's a duplication of efforts. Particularly at this economic crisis time, there is a need to harmonize our approach and tackle the common problems that we have. So knowing each other, and secondly, really informing our policymakers, our ministers, that we are doing this and this kind of things. It's difficult to go to each 54 country and promote what we have been doing. But this forum has helped us to tell them that we are there to build the capacity of member states.
Also something I can say, in addition, I quite agree with my colleague. In addition to that, it is also for us as development partners, also as specialists, update of our own knowledge and background, because really this changes all the time, and really this prepares us better to know what is there, and really how we can use this for policy dialogue with the governments and other partners, to know that this can be done. You have a variety. So it is good also for us to keep informed, really, so that really we can work better with our partner, our member countries, and so on and so forth.
The first thing that impressed me very much during the conference is that apparently everyone nowadays is fully conscious about the need to use technology for the pedagogy. And this was coming from many interventions, and I think this is a very positive conclusion or starting point, depending where you are. So this was very encouraging. And the second aspect is, as it has already been mentioned, the networking opportunity. And again, what is really impressive with technology is that in such kind of conference, after the presentation of the European Schoolnet Academy, for example, several people came to me asking, how can I join? How can I benefit from it? What can I do? And with technology, you are able to propose them something, because they can't stay here in Tunisia. For example, it was a few teachers from Tunis saying that they would like to follow some courses. And it's possible. You just need to access a computer, which is not so difficult, and then you connect and you will benefit from courses that are organized in another part of the world. But if you want to make it, you will make it. So this is a very, very interesting advantage of this effort in integrating technology in education.
Getting education online or through different interfaces other than through a traditional school setting requires a significant amount of individual willpower. No one is there to make you study. Instead, users can find themselves easily distracted with social networks, YouTube, and every other entertainment possibilities, which come with these technologies. So how do we ensure that these tools will actually be used for education?
Well, I think, for sure, fortunately, everything is not the MOOC type, MOOC, massive online where people are sitting together. And I think this should, to my opinion, this should be gradual, and depending on the settings. And this is also, you need a paradigm shift, and it cannot happen all of a sudden. And really, this is why probably at the beginning, probably should always keep combine this face-to-face with, I think you've been doing this, face-to-face with total online. And, try to find some combination that really the student don't feel that he's left alone. But what you should also realize is the motivation also. A student who really knows he needs that, he will do it. But you see, I think the way really educationers can compensate for this, knowing the psychology of a learner, is really to combine and face-to-face with learning, and to vary the type of engagement of the students for different type of exercises and so on and so forth. Yeah, you must be clear on that. Because you've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, we call it a blended approach. It's not simply to bring the people face to face, to somehow interrupt the online communication, but it has also an advantage, its own advantage. When you communicate with people, the social aspect has a much bigger power, not just in sharing experiences, but in developing yourself, your intellectual capacity. As social constructivists are mentioning. So we always advocate for a blended approach, the online as well as the face-to-face. And secondly, as he mentioned, for them to be motivated, not to go an unnecessary social media, Facebook and chatting kind of things, the person should be able to expect something when he or she completes particular program. So the incentive should not necessarily be in terms of money, but in terms of recognition for what he or she achieved through engaging himself or herself through that program. So that's why we are also targeting policymakers and high-level officials of the Ministry of Education, so that they recognize and reward this kind of activity. So a combination of these things can help. I don't know.
Recognition is indeed a very key issue for what has been invested, for example, by teachers in in-service training, to be recognized as an important element for them to progress in their career. And we are working rather hard with the different education system for the training courses and programs we propose to become part of in-service training at national level, and not just to be used for career progression, but also in some countries where it is possible to become compulsory within in-service training, to be sure that we we reach a scaling up effect and some generalization, because for the moment we know very well that very interesting practices are developing here and there, but it doesn't change yet the mainstream education. There is anyway a second way to motivate teachers to take this course or other teaching staff. We know from research that money is not so much appealing for teachers, but being able to bring something to the course, and this is an important issue, to keep enough room for the participants to this training program to also be in a way in the pilot seat of it. So not just listening to what the expert or the professor is explaining, but also to give them the opportunity to connect with their reality, to mention such tool, to mention such website, to participate really, to really contribute with testing something in their classroom and then coming back and discussing it on the forum with their colleagues is something they very much appreciate. And we also know from the very limited research about what is happening in the MOOCs that at local level, people communicating online fix some meetings, and we are more or less in the blended learning situation. They fix meeting together to meet, to discuss face to face. It's no more part, it's not designed by the program itself, but it's the way people appropriate themselves the tools, and then they organize some face to face meeting to discuss, and they start to build network, local network, and it progresses that way. And this is again a very interesting aspect of these situations.